we're going. What? What do you want? You've been for a walk. I'm not going back out there. It's bloody freezing, mate. Go and sit down, rather than banging your tail on the table. Go sit down. Good boy. No. Thanks. It's my dog, not my children. Like I talk to my children like that. I'd be, go to your room. No, I wouldn't. Yeah, it would. Right, 301. Still Friday the 18th of November. 301. Bit of a letdown. Done 300 now. It's not a letdown because this is quite a good one. Quite looking forward to this. Not only that, because I love the bottle. This wasn't donated by anybody. This was part of my personal collection acquisition over the years that I've just never opened. I just love it. Part of me doesn't really want to open it because I just love this little... Chambord is the bottle that I call the Holy Hand Grenade, but this is such a kind of little, like, I just want to pull the pin and throw it, but it would be a waste of whiskey. Glenrothes, which was founded in 1879 here, on the River Rothes, funnily enough, and it was a conglomerate of a few bankers and a guy called James Stewart, who, not the racing driver, well before him, the James Stewart was had previously, a couple of years earlier, just acquired the license for Macallan Distillery. But unfortunately, a few years later, we're looking at 1987, I think it was like 2 years later, in fact, so 1881, James Stewart's finances pretty much fell apart, and the conglomerate partnership sort of fell apart, and a number of the bankers clubbed together and took over ownership of the Glenrothes distillery, and this ownership company was known as William Grant and Co. because one of the bankers was called William Grant. Now, this is where it confuses matters slightly, because there is also another William Grant that set up another distillery not that far away called Glenfiddich. It's not that William Grant, but they will sort of tie in later on. So William Grant and Co., not that William Grant, went on for a few years and then merged with another company called Island Distillers Limited, who owned Bunhaven, to create a company called Highland Distillers, the Highland Distillers Company. And they basically carried on now, Bunhaven, Isla, they're in with Highland Distillers, okay, fair enough. And they carried on going despite the fact that in 1898, 1903 and 1922, they had fairly major fires/explosions that didn't so much decimate the distillery, but really impacted operations. But they kept plugging away, mainly because they were a very key part of Cutty Sark Blend and Famous Grouse, which I've had both in the challenge, and both Famous Grouse particularly was very, very surprising. Cutty Sark, excellent. Grouse, much, much better than I thought it was going to be. And that kind of kept it along, because Cutty Sark and Grouse, big name blends, and really did just kind of like keep the distillery going because of the demand for it. So the Cutty Sark blend, the brand itself, was owned by Berry Brothers and Rudd, which were a wine merchants based down in London. And in 1987, Berry Brothers and Rudd actually took ownership of the Glenrothes distillery, because they owned, at that point, 50% of the Cutty Sark brand. And in 2000 and crap, when was it? Because I didn't write that down. I think it was 2005, but I could be completely wrong. I've got a feeling I am well off. Maybe 2007, maybe even 2010, maybe none of those, maybe a completely different year. They ended up selling the Cutty Sark brand to Edrington. Edrington, the company that own Macallan, Highland Park, very big company. And they basically sold the Cutty Sark brand to Edrington in exchange for ownership of the Glenrothes distillery. So Edrington were kind of like, well, we want all of it, and Berry Brothers and Rudd were like, well, you can have Cutty Sark if we can have Glenrothes, because we want all of Glenrothes, and we'll still keep giving you. So Glenrothes are a kind of single malt distillery that are also key to blends, but because they're doing very well as single malts themselves, they really are juggling between the two. So kind of complicated. Did I say Glenfiddich would be involved later on? I don't know why I did, because they've got nothing to do with Edrington as well. Ignore me. It's Friday night. It's bloody late as well. I really should be in bed, but I need to get these knocked off. So yeah, did any of that make sense? No, I don't think it did. Anyway, they're currently owned by Berry Brothers and Rudd. That's about it. They don't tend to do age statements. They tend to do vintages, which kind of complicates matters. And it was always a bit of an issue when working at the whisky shop, when I was the manager there, because you've got all these bottles of whiskey with 10, 12, 15 and all that lot, and then bloody Glenrothes with a 1992 and a 1972 and all this lot, and they were like, well, how old is it? And you've got to look at the label and go, well, it was bottled in that, and do the maths. And as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I'm not very good at maths. So it's very much kind of like, it's 18-year-old. So it's almost like being a bit awkward, but it gives them individuality. So this is the miniature of the Glenrothes Select Reserve, which is their standard version. It's a no age statement version, no vintage on it, because it is essentially a vatting of different ages that their master distiller has basically combined together to go, this is a core representation of Glenrothes. The full-size bottle isn't much different to that. It looks like that. It's basically a bigger version of this, which is great. I love when miniatures do that. Kraken, the dark rum, I love the miniature of Kraken because it's exactly the same bottle, just scaled down. It's like a baby version. So yes, I'm so tempted to open it with my teeth, but then I'd just want to chuck it across the room, and that wouldn't be good for any of us, would it? Especially not my dog. So mainly sherry casks, some bourbon casks are used, but I've always known it as being a sherried Speysider rather than any bourbon influence, but there is some bourbon casks that are used. So normal miniatures are 5 cl, but this is 10, so it is a decent miniature. And I can actually remember we sold quite a good set where it's 3 miniatures. It was Select Reserve and like 2 vintages as a miniature set in the cardboard outlay, and we used to sell bucket loads of it. And being 10 cl, obviously there was a slightly higher charge, but because it looked so good, it was such an easy sell whenever we had it in. I was going to say something else as well, I can't remember. No, it's gone, I'm tired, ignore me. I've done 301 of these, come on, give me a break. So yeah, no age statement. Now whether colouring's been added to it, difficult to say. There's nothing, well there probably wouldn't be because it's not, there's no mit-farb stuff or anything like that, but there's difficult to say whether they are adding colouring or not. Who knows? Who cares? Well, some people do, but I'm not that bothered anyway. But a nice colour, a nice healthy whiskey colour, not like burnt umber. It's not, I wouldn't say it's dark or light, it's slap bang in the middle. It's 43% as well, which is not unusual, but it's nice to see. Oh, it's our standard version here, have it at 40%, which means they've taken to me indicates a little bit of thought, because they've gone, right, 40%, do you know what? It's not actually as good as the 43, we'll release it at the 43. This nose is suggesting to me that colouring has been added, unfortunately. And if colouring hasn't been added, there's a slight off note, only very, very slightly, but there's a very slight off note about it that suggests to me that colouring's been put in, but I'm not too sure. But it's quite a difficult nose to describe, because it's very classically whiskey-ish. There is malt there, there is toffee there, there is some fruit, and there is some sherriness. Sherriness? That's not even a word. But there is very classic whiskey elements that are almost difficult to describe, because they're kind of like tangential. Bollocks, I don't know. It kind of ethereal. Maybe that's the word I'm thinking of. Where it's just evocative of whiskey generally without being specific. So there is warmth, there is malt, there is kind of like a sweet fruitiness to it as well, but it's a very warming fruitiness. But like I say, just at the background there's this real note, there's a note there that just reminds me of whiskies that have had colouring added to it, which suggests to me that it has, and if they haven't, then it's just something that I'm picking up that probably most other people might not. They might nose that and go, yeah, it smells really nice. And it is a good nose, to be honest. I think I might be just reading a bit too much into it. So the nose was classically whiskey. And the palate is classically whiskey. It really is just malt, and there's a rich, silky mouthfeel to it. There's malt, there's toffee, there's a little bit of oak in there. There's a little kick of sort of dry oakiness, but it's not overpowering, it's not woody, it's not chewing on a bit of cask. It's just lifting everything on the finish. Of the finish, it's not massively long, but it is warming. It disappears a little bit quickly, but not like, well, it's not much of a finish. It's just kind of there and then it goes. And it's not lingering, it's not lasting for hours, but it's almost like, do you know, I've done my job, I'm off now, thanks. And you're like, you've done a good job there, mate, thanks, I'll see you later. So it's not a problem that the finish isn't massively long, because not every whiskey has to have a finish that lasts for 2.5 hours. This is such a solid whiskey. There is nothing wrong with this. There is nothing outstanding about it, but it's just a really bloody good, well-made whiskey. And in packaging like that, that is a perfect present. That really is for any whiskey drinker. Anybody that is not a hardcore, I will only drink Islays, I will only drink this particular brand, I will only drink whiskey over 18 years of age because I'm a whiskey snob. But anybody that was like 90% of the people that used to come into the whiskey shop, where it was partners of people that drank whiskey, and it was my wife or my husband drinks whiskey. What do they like? Well, I've seen a bottle of Glenmorangie on the shelf, or they've got a couple of bottles and they've got Highland Park, and I know he likes Macallan and like that. And unless it was all he's got is Lafroig and Ardbeg and Lagavulin, you'd be onto an absolute winner. You would sell bucket loads of this at Christmas because it looks really good. It's in a really good bit of packaging. It's slightly more expensive than probably it needs to be. I mean, it's a no age statement, and it's 36 quid at the Whisky Exchange. However, right now, Tesco have got 10 quid off a bottle, down to 28 quid, down from 38 quid. 28 quid for that, full size, in that packaging, as a Christmas present, stupidly ridiculous value for money. You will not go wrong with that unless they just drink Islay whiskies, or smoky whiskies, or peated whiskies, or anything like that. Because there is, like I say, what is in there is solid as a rock. Nothing wacky, nothing out there, nothing like the Glendallan that I've just had, which was slightly more delicate and sweet and spicy and everything like that. This is classic Scotch single malt, particularly Speyside whiskey. Nothing wrong with that at all. There are very, very few people that aren't going to like that, I think. It might be slightly too light for some people, but the people that aren't going to like this are hardcore whiskey drinkers that know what they like anyway. To be honest, I honestly think that'll be the case. The people that don't like this either don't like whiskey full stop, and there are people out there, and I know there are some people that say, well, you just haven't had the right whiskey yet. Do you know what? No, they don't like whiskey. And even if you gave them it and didn't tell them what it was, it's more than likely that they're still not going to like it. You can try all you want, but they're just going to get pissed off at you. There are people out there that just don't like whiskey. It's fine. That's fine. Not a problem. But for people that do like whiskey, but aren't particularly bothered or aren't particularly picky, you won't go wrong with that at all. And with the packaging that it's got, which looks absolutely fantastic on a shelf, 28 quid at Tesco's. Get yourself down to Tesco's and get yourself stocked up for Christmas. Anybody in your family that's a whiskey drinker and you're not quite sure what to buy them, but you know that they've got a couple of bottles of whiskey on the shelf, 28 quid, you're sorted. They're going to absolutely love you. It's really good. It's really good. Is it amazing? No. Is it really, really good? Yes. It's a very, very well-made whiskey. It really is. It's people that know exactly what they're doing and just making really rock-solid, dependable whiskey. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And that makes me want to go and try the vintages. I want to see what the others are like. I really do. Because I think if that's their representation of the core of a kind of introduction to Glenrothes, then some of the others are going to be absolute stonkers, I bet you. Really good stuff. Really nice. Well done, guys. That is top drawer work, and get yourself to Tesco, because that is a ruddy bargain at 28 quid. Right, that's me done. It's really late. I need to go to bed. So I shall see you at the next one, where the next one, as long as the technology works, which is a different matter entirely, I will actually have a helping hand on the next one. So I shall see you then, or we will see you then. Right, see you then. Bye.